All right, thank you. So, hello everyone. Good morning. My name is Annabelle, and I'll be MC for tonight. And before we start, a gentle reminder to everyone to make sure that your mic is muted so that we have a smooth flow for throughout the event tonight. Okay, but don't worry because we will open the floor for Q&A later. And if you see on top of your screen right now, you will see a slider code 92874. There you can drop your questions along the way when so that Mr. Shakit can answer for us later. All right, any questions that you might have for him. Okay, so first off, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining us, whether you're a Hot Prize participant or not. I'm sure you're all equally welcome here, and we all have something to learn tonight. Okay. And today is a very special day because we've got an honored guest among us tonight, Mr. Shaikit. And for those of you who don't know, which I think you should already know, but Mr. Shakit is a social entrepreneur. He's a youth advocate, a change maker, and of course, a true inspiration to us all. And something that might excite you is that he's also the 2018 Hult Prize Regionals finalist and now the founder of Serum Initiative, a startup that provides supply to empower rural, urban poor, and marginalized communities in Malaysia. And not only that, he's also the co-founder of Luminary, Chief Operating Officer of Nation Building School. And if I were to go on and on about his social entrepreneurship journey, I'm sure we might not be able to finish tonight. So I think I better let Mr. Shakit do the talking. And without further ado, Mr. Shakit, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi guys. Can you guys hear me? Or is it too
Yep.
loud?
No, just nice.
All right. Yeah. So is it okay if I share my screen? Because I do have like a quick slides for you guys to see as well.
Yep, of course.
Right. Let me just. Okay. Can you guys see?
Yep, perfect.
All right. Nice. So yeah. Hello everyone. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me here with you guys tonight. So of course, quick introduction. I'm Shaikit. Also, I was a participant of Hot Prize back in 2018. So I made it all the way to being the regional finalist. And today, actually, I'm here to share with you a little bit more about my social entrepreneurship journey as a whole, how it started all the way from when I was still a student, when I was participating in Hot Prize, just like every one of you here, all the way to really pushing it to become a social enterprise itself and starting growing it and growing it into the ecosystem in Malaysia as a whole today. So what I'm going to share today is that I'm going to start off from me as a student first, because I feel like that part is where it's more relatable in a sense to you guys as well, especially when it's related to Help Price as well, right? Then all the way until so-called like post-student kind of journey that I had as well. So yeah, so this is like a quick slide that I have, and I hope that every one of you can see, right? So if you can see, do give like a thumbs up or any kind of like signal in the chat, just so that I know that I'm speaking to you guys. Okay, great, great. All right. So yeah, so just like the introduction just now, right? So this is a little bit of a quick background about what I do. So I'm a graduate of mechanical engineering from UPM, University Putra Malaysia. Right now, actually, I'm also pursuing my postgrad studies in solar thermal energy, which is more related to engineering side. So related to Hult Prize, I was actually a champion of Hult Prize in UPM back in 2018 and proceed, like I mentioned, to regional finalists in Hult Prize Kuala Lumpur 2018. I will share a little bit more why I choose to go to Kuala Lumpur rather than anywhere else in the world when we did have a choice as a team. At the same time, right now, my role in this ecosystem as a whole, right? So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Luminary, a tech-based social enterprise. And under Luminary, I have actually founded Serum, which is something that we founded recently during the start of MCO to provide hand sanitizer and face masks for the underserved communities. And also there will be element of empowerment, which I will share later as well. So other than studies and social entrepreneurship kind of involvement, I'm also very much heavily involved in the NGO and the social impact making scene in Malaysia. So I'm the CEO of Nation Building School. If you never heard of Nation Building School, we are a youth empowerment NGO by the youth for the youth in Malaysia. On the other side, also I'm actually one of the director of impact and research at the Malaysian Social Project. So we are a pro bono consulting organization for third sector like whether it's NGO or social enterprises, we provide consulting services for them for free. And how we do is that we involve both students and excellent consultants from firms like BCG or even Kearney, the real consultants who work together with students to provide solution for the third sector. And lastly, and again, if you guys never heard of YSEALI, Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative, all of you should really hear about it, because I was selected for the academic fellowship, where I had the chance to go to US, fully funded for 5 to 6 weeks to learn and to bond with the community there about social entrepreneurship. And also, I was actually in considered as a student at Brown University there. So if you guys never heard of this, do check out each of these things that I mentioned, whether it's Serum, Nation Building School, the Malaysian Social Project, or YSEALI, because all of them, all of these organizations or initiatives very much involve youth in it, and there's a lot of learning in that. So if you have any like sort of interest or any questions towards that, feel free to drop to me during this session. And of course, now right now I'm actually looking at my own slide. If any one of you have any sort of question, or anyone here, right, you can just unmute or let me know if you want to ask directly if there's a dire question. Yeah, so feel free to do that. It's a very casual session that we have today, right? So yeah, so I think before I start talking more into about social entrepreneurship, I think it's fair for me to introduce a little bit of my involvement back in UPM when I was still a student prior to social entrepreneurship. So on one end, I was very much an active debater in the Malaysia scene, right? And I was the president of our debate club back in UPM. We do public speaking, debating, and so on. And on the other side, I'm also very much involved in engineering side, because that's my studies, right? And I do have a passion for that. Hence, I was the admin management director of the Putra Motorsport team, where we as a team literally, that's the actually motorsport car that we built. It's not just a model, it's something that we use to race. We brought it all the way to Japan and able to actually compete in one of the student Formula Japan back in 2018 as well. So yeah, so a general thought about this is that when I think back about my student life, right, is that I was always active in a way that, when I saw something that I'm interested, I was involved in it, and, try to find out, what's my passion in a way, because I was very much lost, and I didn't really know what I really want. On one end, I'm very much interested in engineering. On the other end, I just love talking. Hence that's why there's debate and engineering kind of integration here, right? So that's why I was thinking like, okay, so I will involve as much as I can, and let's see what it does. So I think the kind of takeaway from here when I look back in my student life is more about when we always try to stay active. That's where we have the chance to see a certain level of opportunity out there, whether it's within university or out of university. And out of university, which is something that made me grow a lot. But nonetheless, staying active is where it got me really able to break the boundary, saying that, hey, I'm not just here to graduate and be a random engineer. I'm just not going to graduate and just without an aim. I try my best to stay active and explore as much as I can, and ultimately I have more choices in the end after I graduate and on what I want to pursue with a more clarity in terms of where I want to go after graduating, right? So I think that's where it got me a little bit more focused right after as a student back in UPM. And so that one was about my involvement in UPM as a student. But of course, my interaction or my engagement with Hult also began when I was still a student. So that one was back in 2018. If I'm not mistaken, the UPM, the campus levels happened in December of 2017. And during the time, the Hult, the theme was about harnessing the power of energy. I realized that for this year, you guys are focusing on food, right? So back in 2018, it's about harnessing power of energy. And realizing this, right, on the fact that first thing, I love talking, I love teaching, I love about building ideas. On the other end, I'm very much into engineering as well. Hence, this the back in 2018, the theme relates with me very well, because there's an element of engineering that I can actually integrate within the social entrepreneurship, right? Hence, that's why I was like, okay, this is something really got my interest, and let's jump into it and see how it works and what is it about. And bear in mind, of course, I guess it might relate to some of you here as well, that I have never had any prior business or any marketing or any kind of involvement. I was very much an engineering student, and I was partially also involved in social impact kind of initiatives as well. So my experience in this scene is almost like I would say almost like zero. Yet I was like the first thought I had was that what's worst from participating in this? Ultimately, anyhow, there will be certain things that I would learn and certain things I feel like it's very much replicable. If you learn how to build a startup, those kind of skills that you can learn from that process, right, is very much replicable anyway. So it felt like, I have nothing to lose. Hence, that's why I just jumped right into it. And I guess right now, may I just quickly ask, right, you guys have not started, the competition, the hub competition yet, right? So meaning that the campus level, has it happening already, or is it still like happening later on? Anyone in the chat can let me know.
The pitch day will be on the 28th.
28. So that one will be the competition itself, right?
Yep.
Yep. So I think this is perfect, or what I want to share, because I think the one of the major questions you guys have is that how do I even come up with ideas? How do I even brainstorm properly on how it fits towards this theme or as a social enterprise idea, right? So I can share a little bit about how I did it. What I did was that I know that there's an element of engineering in it. So immediate thought that I had during the time was that first, to see around me who might be interested to participate in this with me. So hence that's why I found two of my friends who are very much active in whether it's debating or whether it's social impact scene. I realized, the guy on in the picture, right? So he's Ping Zi. He is very much involved in the NGO kind of volunteer work. And Rasta is also very much involved in the debating scene and also involved somewhat in the business scene as well. So the first thing I thought was that, okay, so what do I need the people who are actually interested in it and certain levels of skills they have. And bear in mind that it's impossible for you to find someone who's already excellent and expert in this scene. What I really believe is that as long as you find someone who's passionate in doing this for real and being serious about it, the skills that you need in order for you to participate in Hub Prize, right, is always learnable as long as you have the commitment to it, right? So that's the first thought I have. So the first step I had was that, okay, find the people I need. So I found them too. The next thing is that, okay, now that, I might have like a team to, assemble together and actually go for this competition, but what's next? Like, how do I come up with idea? So immediate thought I have is that, okay, how do I look around the resources I have right now? Of course, going online and research, that's something that for sure is no brainer. That's something you should do, right? But what else can I do? So I realized that, during 2018, it's about the time that I would need to jump into my final year project. I think that's at the end of my third year already. So I was like, okay, I'm about to jump into my final year project. And I know that in UPM engineering faculty, right, they do have a lot of great masters and PhD researchers that's only in theory and never took it out and being implemented conventionally. So what I felt was that, okay, so there's a lot of elements of knowledge in there. So why not leverage on the kind of access that I have around me, which is the engineering faculty's knowledge itself. So what I did there was that I say that, okay, of course I went there and I told them that I need to access to the thesis room for my FYP. Of course I did that. But at the same time, I was looking through, the titles, the list of titles of thesis there and try to figure out, which one of them can potentially be remodeled and improved and become a solution in terms of harnessing the power of energy and solving a social issue. So that's how I actually, other than doing online research and competitor research on what other people are doing as well in this scene, whether it's solar energy and so on. But at the same time, I leverage heavily on the resources around me as well. So hence that's why we came out like with a list of 10 ideas. We sat down together as a team, and then we crossed out like, okay, on technically and technical part, I was looking at, okay, this is not possible, not possible. On the business end, on the social impact end, whether it makes sense or not, we start discussing as a team, and then we found out the idea. So the final idea that we got was that we want to build a device that uses solar thermal energy to produce clean drinkable water in the rural communities, which in Malaysia, for example, is more towards like orang asli villages and so on. So that was our idea. We did a lot of researches, we did a lot of studies, both the technical part and also in the market and what kind of business model it makes sense and so on. We learned everything from ground zero. We didn't even know what is business model in the first place, right? And during that time there wasn't that much of resources that coming to us. Hence we're learning everything from scratch. And ultimately, because of that, we were able to prepare well enough and present well enough for our pitch deck to actually win the Hult Prize in UPM. So that's more on the UPM, the campus level Hult Prize in UPM, right? But of course, after winning this, the next step is that from December all the way, if I'm not mistaken, is around March of 2018, there's about like 3 to 4 months time for me to prepare before going to regional finals. So regional finals, of course, you can choose to be in overseas. For example, you can choose to go to US, you can choose to go to, if I'm not mistaken, like Japan, or even Kuala Lumpur itself. We do also have a base for regional finals competition. Regional final is where you have participants from all around the world to come together to that regions to actually compete to win that being the regional champion itself. So for us, our pitch was a lot more focused on Malaysia. So we felt like because our narrative is focused in Malaysia, we chose to stay in the Kuala Lumpur regional finals to compete there because we feel like that's more able to resonate with the judges or resonate with the audience when we pitch about this in Malaysia because we want to start from here first. So that's the whole narrative why we choose that, right? But bear in mind that before you go into regional final, a lot of preparation actually needs to be done. You would need to more research, more validation, especially the validation part. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw this from the Hult Prize team itself, right? They say that those people who goes into regional finals, right, you would need to at least have a proof of concept. It's best if you have already done certain level of market validation or you have a prototype or proof of concept at least on the kind of solution and products or service that you want to do, or at least a market research market survey, for example. So that was the thing that is somewhat like a benchmark when it comes to regional finals. They do say that it's not compulsory, but imagine that if every single other participant has done on the ground and have a prototype, for example, if you are not doing that, you definitely lose out from that. Hence, that's why we felt like, okay, during this preparation phase, there's a lot need to be done. So what did we do first? First, we realized that we have a huge lack of knowledge. We need an expert to help us. That's why when during Hult Prize in UPM, right, the campus level, right, what we did was that it was like, okay, the judges are really credible. The judges are really critical in our things and can really help us. So why not just, approach them and ask them to be our mentor? And you might think that that's a bit like the skin is really thick. Like you just simply, they're supposed to be your judges. You just approach them and ask them for help, is it? But bear in mind is that first, always ask. If you don't ask, you will never get. If you ask, even if it's rejected, what's the worst case scenario? It's impossible to think that the judges will hate you for it, right? So there's nothing to lose to, in my opinion, for you to ask. And I guess second is that a lot of these like people who are willing to volunteer time to do, for example, sharing session or being a judge for the competition, right? They are very much passionate in helping the youth or helping people who are passionate in this thing to grow to go to the next level. So it's a lot of times if they have the time and resources, they would love to be your mentor and actually to help you out as long as you take it serious and you actually leverage it well. So that's what we did. The first thing we did was that we realized we lack of this. We went to the judges and asked one of them saying that, hey, can you be our mentor? And that's where he really prepared us during this time, came all the way to the university to listen to our pitch, to refine it together, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing. Second thing is that we realized, we need to validate in terms of our products and or service, right? Hence, what we did was that since our idea is to design a device to provide clean drinkable water for RRC community, it only makes sense if that we can be on the ground and really look at their problem with clean water access. At the same time, if we have a prototype to test it out, that would be great. And that's exactly what we did. We went all the way to get a letter of approval, and then I went on to design the kind of prototype, and then get engaged with the local communities in around RC communities, local representative and all. And then we went all the way to Tasik Bera and actually did the validation. And then we interacted with the communities to understand the issue. So in this process, right, it's not simply about validating whether your tech works or not, but it's more about validating that the problem that you're trying to solve, the problem you say that exists in the region, in the community you say, is actually there. So we went on the ground, like you see in the picture, talked to them, and then we interacted with them, and we also actually we bought KFC together and actually have a dinner together and interact and all this, and then ultimately also at the same time validate on our technology as well. And yeah, that's what we did before the regional final and further refine in terms of our business model, talk to more people and pitch more. And that's where the process of preparation somewhat looks like that in a simplified manner. And then, of course, ultimately, we proceeded to Hult Regional in Kuala Lumpur. So unfortunately, in Hult Regional Finals, we did not win. We weren't the champion, but we were nominated as one of the top 8 top 8 startups, top 8 social enterprise in the competition. And also, of course, bear in mind that you are during this stage, you are competing with people from all around the world. We have people from London, we have people from Tokyo, we have people from the Middle Eastern countries. So that's why the competition is huge. Even though we didn't win, right? But what we really learned from this is that going into this scene, we realized there's so many like-minded youth in this scene. It's really humbling experience to see that many of them, even younger than me, they actually an extensive and great idea and great implementation for their social enterprise, startup, even when they're still a student. I think that's where that kind of interaction with them, right, really pushed me to think that, hey, I thought that participating in this and trying to start something like this, I mean, really like above average kind of level among people of our age. But when you get to broaden your horizon and meet different people, right, you realize that actually there are a lot of people out there which are extremely talented, and there's always room to learn from them and actually collaborate with them as well. Hence, that's why this Hub regional competition in Kuala Lumpur, right, is very much an eye opener to see people like this, like just like us. So yeah, it's a very very interesting experience we have there. So yeah, I think before that, is there any question? Because right now I just finished sharing the Hub Prize competition. I just want to have a quick check. Is everyone still here? Because it's really silent and everything. And it feels
Yes,
like
can hear
I'm
you
talking
loud
to
and
my own
clear.
screen, right? So I just want to make sure that everyone is here, right? Everyone's good?
We're here.
Yep. Okay. So I did see a question on why were you able to win your campus competition? Was it comparatively better developed? Was it a better idea as a whole? So I think all those factors definitely come into picture, whether the idea is better and all these things. But like the thing is like this, there are many, many factors. I think first of all, I would encourage you guys to look at what is pitch deck in the first place. I mean, a lot of people joined the competition during my time, right? Didn't even know what a social enterprise is, or even know what a business model or what pitch deck is. And if you go to competition without understanding the fundamentals at all, of course you definitely lose out. But let's say comparing to those who understand this and actually have great ideas as well, one of the reasons why we won, I personally think is that because first of all, we did our research really extensive in terms where we clearly point out in terms of market size, for example, how many people in Southeast Asia is in lack of clean water and how many in the world. So for example, the statistics is like at least 3 out of 10 people in the world actually don't have access to clean drinkable water. And that itself really justify, and then we paint a narrative, we justify the problem exists. And then, our business model, how does it work and how we generate money and all. We take references, we did a lot of extensive research to prove. So I think one of the major reasons why we won over the other participant, for us, at least for my specific case, is that we have a lot more credibility, meaning in terms of the justification I provide for them, saying that why this would work, why the problem exists, why our business, why is the market size huge, why is there a potential for us to scale up to such a large level, and also why our technology would work, how we actually derive it from a thesis, for example. So those are the reasons that got us more credible compared to the others. I think the ideas everyone actually have very good idea, but how do you prove it to the judge that it will work? I think that one is something very important as well. So yeah, I hope I answered that question specifically. Yep. So I can see most of you guys are still around. That's great. So yeah, right now I will share that I just shared about how from a student all the way to Hub Prize and going to regional final and median win. So right now at the stage where after you participate in Hub Prize regional, right, and didn't win, does it mean that's the end? So most of the participants, for them, yes, most of them after they lose in a certain stage, whether it's campus level or whether it's regional finals level, right? They just stop immediately and they just think that, hey, it didn't work in the competition, so I'm not going to pursue it anymore. But for us, for me especially as well, we felt like even though we didn't win a competition, but the idea and but the progress that we have made doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. So that's why from Hub Prize itself, we went on to participate in other sort of programs and competition and ultimately growing into being a business itself. So for example, you can see from here, right, whether it's like being the top 3 impact-driven enterprise of Idea Accelerator, whether it's Startup of the Year in Malaysia, GSEA and Wisely and all. So we went really extensive trying to bring this idea to a lot of programs to build it and bring more credibility and refine it further. So bear in mind that I also want to share with you during this time is that right after Hult, um, we were discouraged, of course, but we felt like, okay, in Malaysia, where else can we find resources to build our idea, to build our startup? Hence, the first thing we look at was Magic, Malaysia Global Innovation and Creativity Center. So Magic is the organization that actually pushed a lot of startups as a whole. And we realized during the time they have an accelerator program, which is called Idea Accelerator Program, which is exactly for social enterprises. And that time it was the first cohort. So I guess the timing was really lucky for us. But we realized that if you were to join this kind of program, first of all, we were still student. I was a final year student. I had to manage my FYP studies and at the same time a startup. And second thing is that we are competing with people who are very experienced, whether it's 40 plus, 50 plus years old with corporate experience, or those who are professionally trained, whether it's lawyer and so on and so forth, right? And that itself really like intimidate us. So we we didn't know whether we can do it or not, of course. But again, the kind of idea we had is that we got nothing to lose. What's the worst thing is that we're not selected, then that's it, right? There's nothing to lose there. Hence, we actually signed up. And what I realized was that, for this accelerator program, there were 800 plus to almost 900 organizations or individuals actually applied for the program, and they only selected 30. And we, during the time, we call Luminary, right? Luminary is actually one of the selected social enterprise to participate in it. And of course, that one is really, really exciting. And it was like a 6 week program where you have to be there for workshops and so on. So the lifestyle was somewhat like this. Imagine this on, let's say, for the weekdays, right? From 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I was at Cyberjaya in Magic, going through their workshop and learning from them, learning about social enterprises from A to Z. And then after that, after 6 o'clock, I had dinner and then got back home about 8 o'clock. And right after that, a little bit of rest, and then I started studying, and all the way to like about 1 a.m. and then take a nap, sleep, and the next morning 8 a.m. was my final year examination, so final paper, and that kind of process went through for like 2 weeks straight. And of course, that was really, really difficult. But the great thing is that the learning curve was really satisfying. The fact that I was able to learn so much from, people who are experienced from this program, which is like, I would feel like it's one of the best you can get in Malaysia. And get to also pitch my idea, build my idea forward. So the process is really difficult, but it was really satisfying able to build something from scratch. It's just like your own baby. And of course, I'm saying this, not saying that every single one of you have to go through such a difficult process to build it. But, ultimately, if things get difficult, do be aware of that. And at the same time, do acknowledge the fact that there's so much learning you're getting from this. And that's what really pushed me and made me really passionate into carrying it forward. So yeah, that's kind of like the experience I had. And ultimately, I was really, really surprised in the way that in the accelerator program, out of the 30 that was chosen, we were one of the top three social enterprise, and we were definitely the youngest team among all the 30 selected social enterprises. And at the same time, that semester that I was joining this program was the only semester actually I got a fourth flat. So that's why a lot of people say it's impossible. And part of me was trying to prove them wrong. That's why I worked extra hard on that. But ultimately, I will always say that it's possible. A lot of people also say that, you should work smart, don't work hard. For me, it's always work smart and work hard. If you're able to 2 times your speed in terms of learning and doing work by working smart, why not also work hard together so that maybe perhaps you can get 4 times out of other people? So that was like the concept I was holding when I was going through this process, right? And of course, we have the team needs to actually get us so that we don't go crazy and so on, lah. So that's the concept that I was holding on and able to get us to that level to be top three at the same time. Academically is something that we can, for me personally, also I can score well. So yeah, so I'm pointing this out also for especially student entrepreneur. It's definitely not easy, but it's definitely still possible. And if you're feeling like you want to explore it, so this is a heads up to you guys first. All right. So that's more about building my own social enterprise, right? But along the way, when I engage with, Magic, engage with more people and building our credibility as a for our social enterprise, right? What I didn't realize was that indirectly, it also built my credibility as a social entrepreneur myself. Hence, that's why I was thinking like, hey, I gained so much from this progress. I gained so much from the ecosystem. How do I able to give back? So that's why I started getting more into promoting social entrepreneurship in Malaysia. In Malaysia, social entrepreneurship is something still relatively very new, and we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of initiatives, both by government and both by private organization actually pushing for it. So, for example, recently Magic has the grants for social enterprises, and also you have people like Chamber of Social Enterprise Development trying to give up policy in Malaysia regarding social enterprise existing in Malaysia as a legal structure, right? So it felt like there's so much of things are happening and things are new here. And when things are new, that's where it's an untapped market. And it's something that I was really interested in expanding more. Hence, I went on to start promoting more about social entrepreneurship in Malaysia, whether it's speaking in events or workshop or whether it's youth empowerment movement. So I try my best to involve as much as possible and ultimately gain, try to spread this idea and get more youth to involve as well. And of course, after that, other than building their own startup and other than promoting the social entrepreneurship, for me personally, I'm very, very personal. This is a personal thing. I'm very much passionate in on the ground work, which is for social impact. So, still continue in terms of engagement, going to Orang Asli village, helping them build their huts, or providing solar classes for people from the actually even in the Philippines, which in the media picture, or even like for recently providing face mask and hand sanitizer. So the kind of social impact work for me is something that not to me it's not a hassle. To me, it's to reignite my passion in terms of social entrepreneurship, and it works very well for me. And I love the process itself. Hence, that's why still getting very actively involved in on the ground kind of social impact work, and that's what really interests me a lot when it comes to this journey. So other than of course the social impact work, I was thinking like other parts of ecosystem, how do I involve? Hence, that's why with all this engagement, all this involvement, it got me into organizations. For example, the Malaysian Social Project, like I mentioned, the Pro Bono Consulting Organization, as well as Nation Building School, the Youth Empowerment Organization. So because of my involvement and actively building kind of ecosystem, it attracted the organization to take interest in me, and then also I engaged them actively as well. Hence, I was able to be part of them to build that organization together as well. And if you as a youth, you are interested in personal development or even social impact work, right, do check these two organization out, whether it's the Malaysian Social Project or whether it's Nation Building School. Do check them out. We actively involve youth in the equation, and definitely there's a lot for you to gain from here. So yeah, so that's kind of like my more of my involvement in there. I guess right now everyone is good, right? Let me just take a quick sip of water. Okay, I think everyone is still here. That's great. Okay, so I did share about like as a student going to Hult Prize, and from Hult Prize going into building my own social enterprise and going to ecosystem as a whole. All of these things seems like a lot, but bear in mind all those things happen in 2 years, and then each of them it takes gradual progression into that. And what happened ultimately is that I hope you guys still remember during MCO how it is. Right now we have CMCO, but you do remember during MCO it was more strict, right? And during the start of MCO around like March and April during that time, right? That's where me and myself and my roommates were kind of stuck in our home and in Petaling Jaya PJ, and then a lot of things are being halted. And then we were thinking like, okay, so currently we're at this stage, what else can we do? So during the time, we realized that a lot of NGOs doing amazing work in terms of providing food, providing supplies for the underserved communities like refugees, urban poor from the PPR communities, and so on and so forth, right? We realized they're providing so much of like food supplies and so on. That's great. That's something really, really needed in the ecosystem, and they're doing amazing work. But at the same time, we realized that they kind of miss out a certain element of impact there, which is a lot of these communities actually do not have access to hygiene supplies, whether it's hand sanitizer or face mask. And bear in mind, it's like this, they have two barriers. They have the logistic barrier. They can't really go out and actually purchase, especially for refugees. They can't really move around. Second is that, for a financial barrier, they can't really afford to purchase this because during this time, they lost most of their income. They can't even pay their own rent, even can't even bring food to their own table. Having hygiene supplies is not their priority during the time. But at the same time, a lot of them are actually living in a very dense population area. For example, PPR flat, a lot of them are in a way congested. And without these hygiene kits, right, hygiene supplies, it's really, really dangerous for them for the outbreak of COVID-19, the virus itself. Hence, that's why we saw like, there's a gap here, and let's try to do something to help it out. And it started off with just a personal initiative for like during April. It's like, okay, during this month, let's fundraise as much as we can and provide, and then it's a one-off initiative. So we did that. But then ultimately, we realized that after we did the first initiative, suddenly there were more and more requests and more demand from both from the community and from the NGO saying that they actually really need it. We really highlighted the importance of having these hygiene supplies for them. Hence, that's why we were like, okay, let's see what else we can do. So we continue this initiative and try to provide as much as we can after that. And at the same time, there's a lot of iteration happening. So like I mentioned, on the ground work is still there. What we did was that during the time, we were also on the ground and delivering these supplies for the communities, right? And that's where we realized when we went on the ground, that's where we realized the situation is actually worse than we thought. There was this instance where in one of the refugee center, the refugee principal, the one who actually managed the center, right? We saw them wearing a disposable face mask, okay, which is fine. But we realized that the face mask is really, really thin. And then we just asked, like, why is the face mask that you're wearing so thin? And what she told us was like really, really devastating to us. She said that because she can't afford to purchase face masks, she actually rewash and reuse disposable face masks. And she rewash so much until the point that it becomes so thin that it's actually semi-transparent already. Obviously, that can't really protect her anymore, but they really have no choice. Their centers have been closed, they can't do anything, they don't have income, and hence that's why this is the only thing they can do. So seeing these things on the ground, we realize that this is just one of the case out of so many people in Malaysia. And there's definitely something that we need to do. Hence, that's why it expanded, we push out for more initiatives, we push out for more fundraising efforts to actually support them. And for you, if you're interested to know more, feel free to check out on our social media, serum.initiative on IG and Serum Initiative on Facebook. We actively share about what we have done in terms of providing these supplies for them. So that's where when you go on the ground, when you really see the situation on the ground, it becomes a huge drive for you to say that there's something that needs to be done, and I believe that I can do something about it. So that's why we founded Serum during that time. At the same time, right, well, we in the midst of all these things, we were trying to fundraise and all these things. At the same time, we realized that when I was trying to engage with people from UN or bigger organization, NGOs, right, and there was this phone call that I had with one of the manager from an NGO. We were talking about collaboration and all these things, and then suddenly she asked, like, I've been running this initiative so much, so long throughout the MCO, but where are the youths in it? Where are the young people in it? The people who volunteer, the people who spend their time, spend their effort, spend their money during this time are mostly older people. And I don't see young people in it. And I was a bit shocked because to me, actually, there are a lot of initiatives being started by young people, and they're really amazing as well. But what I felt was that perhaps there's a lack of interaction between the young people and the old people. And there's a lack of representation among youths in this social impact making scene. So while in the midst of trying to provide these supplies for people in need, we were thinking like, okay, is there any way for us to involve youth? Because us as a team, we are really excellent in terms of youth development, youth programs, and so on. How do we involve youth into this equation? In the midst of thinking about this, we were like, okay, we are fundraising and we're trying to see what youths are great at. So why not collaborate with youth? So what we felt was that youth, we don't have the purchasing power. We don't have the money to donate that much as the older people. But what we have is our personality, our social media presence, and tech savvy, right? So that's why we were like, why not partner with youth and youth to fundraise, to run for the fundraise for our social initiatives and leverage on what they're good at and make a social impact together. Hence, that's why we were like, okay, let's make a program and call it Fundraising from Home program. That's where we partner with NGO Hub, where we provide a 2-hour fundraising workshop. And then right after the workshop, you will conduct a 2-week fundraising campaign as a group or as a personal initiative, right? To collect as much money as possible. And then that money, 100% of that goes into our initiative of providing these supplies. Hence, right now, I think until um, this month, actually, we had about 70 youths. So in total, we actually have 100 plus, 120 plus youths over this course actually fundraise together with us. And we even have youths from all over 5 different countries as well. And that's where you realize that we just started off just wanting some youth to come together and partner and do this. And suddenly we have more and more connection because the youth are so powerful in terms of like connection and online presence. That's why we connected even people overseas to come together and fundraise together with us as well. So that's why we started this kind of fundraising from home program. And even after that, right? Even after talking about provide fundraising to provide these supplies for them, another thing we realize is that providing these hygiene kits for them is great, but it still doesn't provide income for them. A lot of them, especially for example, refugee artisan, they have really great skills in terms of making kind of products, whether it's like face masks or making tote bag and all these things, right? It's really great at that. But because of NCO, they are very dependent on physical store or booth, and because of that, they lost all their revenue and they have no idea how to do it online. So you were like, since we are already helping them and they're actually in need of help, why not partner with them and actually help them to sell their product online? That's why we found out, have the idea of buy and impact. That's why we partner with the refugee artisan saying that, hey, right now we're providing on the first level, we're providing face masks for those in need. Right now we're providing disposable face masks. So why not, instead of providing disposable face masks, which eventually they will finish using it, why not we partner with the refugee artisan to provide reusable face masks that made by refugee artisan? So in that way, the fundraise money we can use to pay the refugee to make this face mask and then give economic empowerment to them. But at the same time, this face mask we can actually use it to provide for those in need. So we see like there's a 2 layer or even 3 layer, right, of impact, which is the environment impact because we reduce the usage of disposable face masks. Hence, that's why we actually ran the Buy and Impact program, and then we actually are on Shopee. And right now, we also have a partnership with Lazada and Magic for their Buy for Impact campaign. So yeah, feel free to check us out on both Shopee and Lazada as well. But that's where you realize that your initial idea is not always the final idea. The more you involve in it, you realize that actually there are more I can do, or there are things that I need to change and pivot, and there's things that need to be changed in order to fit into to solve a real problem on the ground. And that's what we did, right? So starting off from fundraise just to provide disposable face masks and hand sanitizer, and then we realized that why not involve youth and expand the whole campaign together, and then we involve youth to fundraise together for fundraising from home. And right now we realize that hey, there's an element of economic empowerment, so why not we launch this buy and impact model together with the refugee artisan? So that whole process, it happened since April, and right now it's November, right? So within this month, it's something that we started doing and build it up until where it is right now. And of course, in the future, there's a lot of plans going on in terms of our buy and impact. How do we expand more people to actually come and help us out in terms of purchase our product? How do we encourage customers to purchase products that can make an impact rather than purchase products that's actually create more harm? Some of them potentially do that. So that's what we do right now. We do sell refugee-made reusable face masks and providing free filters for the customer as well. So that's how we iterate in terms of our stuffs, right? So overall, our impact in terms of summarize it, for Serum since April, we have impacted more than 18,000 beneficiaries. Recently, we just finished our last project, which providing for another 15,000 beneficiaries. And then at the same time, we provided more than 400,000 disposable face masks and almost 1,000 more than 400,000 disposable face masks, sorry, actually almost 1,000 reusable face masks, a bit typo there. We provided more than 2,000 liters of hand sanitizer. Economic empowerment right now is more than 5,000 ringgit and it's relatively very new right now, and we're hoping to build that more. And we partner with NGOs, and also we have right now it's actually 120 plus youth from 5 different countries. So yeah, that's actually generally have a look, on into the kind of impact that actually you can even create during this MCO. A lot of this interaction is via online, and a lot of this impact is created while this pandemic is happening. Because while this pandemic is happening, there are more and more people in need of help. There's more and more space for social enterprises to actually come in and play a role. Yep. So before I go on, right, I just want to see, is everyone still around? Everyone still okay?
Yep, we're still here.
Yep, everyone's good, right? Okay, great, great, great. I love seeing the replies here. So yeah, I think generally what I'm sharing here is that it's somewhat like a timeline, end-to-end timeline about what I've done in the social enterprise ecosystem. Like I mentioned, all the way from student. And right now, I'm still considered as a student because I'm pursuing postgraduate studies, right? So point here is really about how being a youth and being a student doesn't mean that you can't make an impact or have a social enterprise that's successful. I think it's really all about whether you truly believe in the process and actually you take the ownership when it comes to this whole process. So first of all, during your engagement with Hult Prize as a whole, right, there's so much of learning, there's so much of potential um, resources that you can tap into, whether it's from Hult directly themselves as a competition, going into bigger regional or even going to finals and build your credibility there. But at the same time, you can still leverage Hult as somewhat like an excuse for you to engage with people who are more experienced to mentor you or to guide you. Or even, for example, you definitely can approach me and ask me, what sort of resources you need as well. Because during this time, a lot of teams, whether it's from Hult or whether it's a student entrepreneur or even youth entrepreneur, they do approach me to mentor them in terms of their startup as a whole. So that's where there's so much of potential that you can get from Hult, but it's really all about whether you can take the ownership and take full use of this program or this competition to leverage it for your own growth. And during this time, you have to actively explore a limit throughout this period, meaning that with how, whether it's possible or not, whether you can go to the extent of building a million ringgit or $1 million social enterprise, or is something that you can start an organization with, or is it something just a personal initiative? All these limits is where it becomes a safe space for you to explore. Again, you have nothing to lose. Again, there's so much potential gain from it compared to the losses that might be there, right? So do explore limits. And right after that is that what it really brought to me when I take the ownership and explore limits is that when I graduated, there was so many options for me to explore. Because I used to be just an engineering student, I thought after graduating, the only thing I can do is just being an engineering consultant, for example. But after engaging, starting from how all the way to social enterprise ecosystem as a whole, I realized there's so much more options out there. I can start involving whether it's in NGO, my own social enterprise, whether in consulting, or whether in community building with the organizations, or even still going back to be an engineer itself. There's so much more options to me during that time, simply because I choose to open my mind during this journey. And then before that, I would never realize there's so much options for me. I only thought that, okay, graduate, this is the only salary I will earn, and this is the only work I have options to. But after this, I have so much of ideas of what to do and so much of credibility to bring myself to the next level. Rather than just being a fresh grad, I was so much more than just a fresh grad when I graduated. So what I really encourage you guys to do right now is really take these three sentences here and really own it and go through this process wholesomely, and then you definitely have so much to gain from it. And of course, ultimately, if you are interested about, let's say, the serum work, like I mentioned, you're interested to be part of it, whether it's for a fundraising effort or collaborate with your organization or whatsoever, do check us out on especially on our social media. That's where we are the most active at. Or even if, let's say, you have some questions you want to ask me, maybe you're too shy to ask right now, you can definitely engage me on my social media. I'm most active on Instagram, so do like drop me a message or anything of the sorts, and then I would love to reply you whenever I have the time. So yeah, that will be all from my sharing, and I'll pass back to the MC, I guess.
Thank you so much for that very interesting sharing. That was very inspirational, seeing how involved you are with all this social entrepreneurship, NGOs, and all that. So we will begin our Q&A session now. Jingmian?
Yep. Shagit, so we have quite a few questions. Okay, for the first one, what is more important in finding partners? Is it passion or experience?
Yep. So I think the better question is like this, right? So within your kind of like the network that you have, how many of them are truly experienced? So because what I realized during the time was that most of the students, as experienced as they claim to be, they will not be more experienced than starting a social enterprise themselves unless they are a entrepreneur themselves, student entrepreneur itself already. And that begs the question also, as a student entrepreneur, do they really have time to commit into this? So I think the experience part, right, is something that is good to have, but it's not necessarily something that you can fully leverage and find right now within the network that you have. Hence, that's why I mentioned like, why I look for those who are passionate and have the commitment to do so first. Because those which are committed and have the passion to do it, that's where you as a team, you would have the initiative and have the room to learn those skills that's needed for this hard price competition. And bear in mind, all these things are very learnable, provided, of course, it's not not that easy. Provided that, of course, the best way to move forward is that you find mentors or find coaches or find people who are more experienced to guide you on where to go, rather than just randomly go everywhere and don't know where you head to, right? So that's why finding someone, a teammate who are passionate in it, who that they are able to commit to this competition together with you, or even potentially commit to this whole social enterprise startup together with you, then those are the ones that I would, in my personal opinion, should be the priority first. Again, because everything is learnable in this process. So yeah, and of course, experience, skills, and all these things is definitely a good to have. Yeah, within your network.
Thank you. So we have another one. I'm really nervous about the final pitch. What should I prepare for it?
Yeah, so I think being nervous is totally normal. It's pretty abnormal if you are not nervous about it, especially if you were to pitch in front of, let's say, experienced judges, right? Personally, I still remember my first pitch to potential investor, how there was this individual which I really look up to in the startup ecosystem from 500 startup, and I pitched to him, and he was the only one who grilled me like really really badly. So I can understand, it would be that there's definitely a part of you definitely would be nervous, right? So that's something totally normal, and it's really all about how do you manage that level of nervousness, right? Whether first thing, of course, is that whether you have a team that truly able to support you, and if you trust your team, the nervous level definitely drop down. Let's say you have a team of three, the nervous level able to divide by three because of that. So that's why finding a team that actually able to bear this burden together with you well, that's also very much important. I think the second thing to handle your nervousness is definitely your preparedness. If you're not prepared at all, definitely you should be nervous if you're not prepared at all. Of course, no matter how much you prepare, there will be a nervousness. But the more you prepare, the less nervous you have, because you know that I know this idea inside out in a way, and any sort of like question they throw, I somehow have an answer to them. So I don't really have kind of a problem and issue with that. And yeah, so that's why being prepared is definitely one way to curb the level of nervousness that you have. So yeah, I think generally those two. Sorry, just now there was a question about um what's needed in the pitch, is it? Sorry, just now yep. The second question, is it about the what's in the pitch, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's needed in the pitch deck? First thing first, I highly encourage you guys to go on Google and search what is a pitch deck and what's expected out of a pitch deck. There's a lot of resources online. So it derive all the way from like your problem statement itself, what sort of problem you're trying to solve, to solution, to like your market size, your business model, competitor analysis, um, financial projection, if you can do that. What's your call to action? Who's your team, and what's the skills and expertise that you guys have? So what I mentioned, that everything actually is able to search online, and you just search like pitch deck and what is actually required in the pitch deck. Typically, pitch deck is simply just a presentation slide, right? The slides itself, but it branded as pitch deck because there's certain element that you should have with the content that you should have within the pitch deck itself. So I think one of the first thing you should definitely not miss out. I feel like a lot of people miss out on two major things. First thing is the problem itself. A lot of you guys feel like, just throw out the problem and say it's like, okay, this is a problem that exists in the world, that's it. The thing is like, you need to understand the problem itself, whether it truly exists or not. Because a lot of the cases in terms of startup or social enterprises is that they're trying to solve a problem which either don't exist, or is very very minute, or there's already someone addressing the problem itself effectively already, and it's not up to you to go into the market and address it. So that's why the problem itself, understand it well, whether it's online research. So for example, like I mentioned, 3 out of 10 people do not have access to clean drinkable water in the world. That's just like a quick fact. But what does it lead to? It leads to diarrhea death is one of the highest the contribution is because of clean drinkable lack of access to clean drinkable water. And what's the number, like what's the real problem, like even to draw it down, why is such issue, why is clean drinkable water not accessible towards so many communities out there. So understanding the problem itself is very, very important. As a social enterprise, you are like a conventional business merged together with a NGO. Conventional business is where you run businesses, you generate money, you make income, and then you're able to have a financial performance well in terms as a business. On the other end, you are somewhat also an element of NGO where you need a social impact or environmental impact element in it. Social enterprise essentially in a way is a combination of two entities into one. So that's why do bear in mind the problem that you're trying to solve. Not only that it's a real problem out there that is addressable, at the same time also there's a market size, meaning that it's somewhat scalable. If I'm not mistaken, this year, the theme is that within 10 years you need to reach out to 1 million people, if I'm not mistaken, right? In terms of the theme, or 1 million or 10 million people, in terms of the theme for Hult Prize. So do be aware that the kind of ideas you come up can address to that theme that was set by Hult Prize itself. Then that's where you start. I think the second element that's very important in your pitch deck is that you need to do your market research well. Whether it's like, let's say if you propose an idea and ultimately actually there's someone out there already doing the same thing as you're doing, when the judge asks you that, how are you going to reply that? They say that, they're already in the market for so long, they're doing pretty well. Why are you better than them? And you need to have an answer to that. It doesn't mean that just because someone else is in the market already, it means that you cannot do it at all. One thing is that, for example, last time they used to have Uber, but Grab came into picture and then Grab dominated in terms of Southeast Asia market, right? So the idea of that is that you have a strength. For example, your strength maybe is in your distribution, or your strength is on your local connection and so on. That's what makes you stronger. But nonetheless, you need to run a good research in terms of competitor analysis, like anyone else is doing it, or people who done similar stuffs, or on the reason why they fail or why they success, and how are you different from them? How are you going to be successful compared to them? I think that's an element that I realized a lot of the student entrepreneur or youths that I mentor when it comes to startups, they always miss out on these two elements. So yeah, that will be the two quick answer to I mean not quick answer, too long answer to you. But do search about pitch deck and research about it what's needed in the deck. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, I'm having a hard time understanding the meaning of social impact. Is it okay to give a brief explanation of the definition?
Yep. So definitely there's no clear cut of what social impact is, but social impact essentially is that you're making a positive impact towards people or towards environment. So for example, I give you a quick example, right? Let's say you're opening a coffee shop. A typical coffee shop is just a coffee shop and they are not really social enterprise. But you can become a social enterprise by, only employing the differently abled community, the OTU, in your cafe. Then because of that, you can become a social enterprise, right? Or even if let's say certain products that people are selling, right, it cause environmental impact. But your product is a zero waste kind of narrative of product. So you create an environmental impact. So ultimately, is that social enterprise, social impact in terms of, let's say in the context of social enterprise, is that the business that you are doing, the more business that you do, the more, let's say, products or service that you sell, the more positive impact is imposed towards whether it's people or towards environment. So that's essentially what an example of social enterprise, social impact is. Some other examples, for example, whether you choose to employ ex-convict, those who went to jail before and after they come out because of the discrimination, they can't really find a job, so you employ ex-convict. Or your social enterprise, for example, another example is Epic. Let's say Epic Homes, one of the very well-known social enterprise in Malaysia. They build houses for the orang asli communities, and they run it as a business as well. So that's another example of social enterprise where you build infrastructure or community development for the communities which are in need of help. For example, we also have, for example, Pizza Eats in Malaysia, which is very, very famous social enterprise, which they sell refugee-made refugee cuisine, the cuisine from the refugee communities itself, and help them to sell like food, whether it's catering or whether it's to customer itself. So they sell this food and provide, for example, employment, economic empowerment. So there are a lot of examples in terms of what a social impact essentially is, ultimately, whether it's to people or whether it's to environment. Yep. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. There are quite a few more. Hang on.
It's okay. Yeah, if you guys don't mind, definitely can extend. I mean, I'm definitely having fun here. So, like I mentioned, I like talking. So yeah.
Thank you so much. There's this one question. Were the judges harsh? What type of questions will they ask?
Okay. Um. So first thing first, judges, right? Whether they're harsh or not, it's not up to me to say. It really depends on who are the judges that you got chosen for, right? For your, let's say, your campus level or regional finals. But I think one of the things that you really have to understand is that the judges are not here, especially the experienced one, are not here to belittle you or make it hard for you. The fact is that they're willing to spend time to be here to listen to your ideas, even for us, we are students and all this, right? And actually ask you question when they actually have many reasons not to be involved at all. The reason they're doing this is because they truly are interested in terms of building, helping you out, for example, and also giving you more feedback and so on. So the questions, a lot of them, it might sound harsh. I think typically us as human being, when we receive feedback or even criticism, right, we tend to be somewhat defensive over it. But bear in mind, most of them who give you feedback and all this is simply because they really are first interested to know more, and they actually do have question in mind. They wish that for you to clarify so they can judge better, or actually give you a space to clarify on certain things you didn't clarify during your pitch. So most of these cases, they ask question for a good reason, not because they want to harm you in any ways. So I think that's the first fact that we really need to establish that. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second is that what sort of question they will ask. I think typically the question they will ask definitely is very much diverse, but at least from my personal experience is that they will focus a lot in terms of whether the not the credibility of you yourself, but more of the credibility of your idea. So for example, if you propose an idea of such and such, right? For example, if you gonna, for example, like I mentioned, the coffee shop that employs the OKU, the certain question they will ask is that how would you justify that it will really work? So for example, they will ask like, or are you gonna employ like differently able community of different range, whether it's visually impaired or whether it's hearing impaired or altogether, because each of them maybe they have a different sort of training and upskilling needed, or even questions like how are you. So a lot of questions focus on why your solution is feasible and why it makes sense for you to implement it. I think the second thing is definitely other than just implementation, but also in terms of your business model, whether it actually will make money, whether you'll be sustainable or not. Ultimately, because a lot of social enterprise, they propose a great idea, but the ideas doesn't generate enough money or income in terms of their business model into supporting their whole organization as a whole. So generally speaking, of course, the judges will ask questions of a huge diverse range depending on their personal take and depend on the pitch. But personally, I feel like these two are the ones that ask the most, or even the question on who are the competitor in the market? How are you better than your competitor? What's your strengths? What's your better value proposition compared to them? I think this kind of question is something that can easily be thrown out by them, but to answer it on the spot is really, really difficult. So best to be prepared for that as well. So yeah, that's my answer. Hope that answer your question.
Yep. And there's this one. Now that you're fully into social entrepreneurship, uh, does your mechanical engineering degree help in what you are doing right now?
Oh, very much. So I think a lot of people tend to see it as an equation like apple to apple, meaning that if you were to study mechanical engineering, then you must do things that are related to mechanical engineering, like you must be engineering something, right? But one thing is that first of all, it did directly help because right now, like I mentioned, I'm pursuing postgrad in solar thermal energy. That's exactly the idea I had for Luminary when I was in Hult Price, meaning that the device to provide clean drinkable water. So in terms of application of my mechanical engineering skill in that element, definitely is a yes. But I think beyond that, right, that doesn't work for everyone's idea, whether what you study relates to them. But beyond that, it really depends on you. How do you relate it to the ventures you have? For me, because I study engineering, because I go through the process of being an engineer, right? I get to learn about how to do logical thinking and how to look at things more of a constructive and more, in a way, more logical way compared to the others, right? Hence, I realized that when I recruit team, I always recruit team members which are potentially not as so-called logical and so-called engineering as me. So, for example, when it comes to businesses, I can sit down and logically think that okay, this is the problem. How do I disassemble it and then become different elements, and how do I solve it as a whole? And a lot of those cases, why I was able to do that was because it derived from the kind of engineering courses I learned, not just simply because of the calculation and everything, but how do we approach problem as an engineer and how do we dissect problems together? And I have friends who are from, for example, admin management or social sciences. They are very much on the qualitative ones, meaning that they look at the issue, they feel like, okay, my gut feels like it's not right. And when it comes to social impact, I feel like if we run it with this module, the communities will feel disempowered, they will feel threatened, they will feel intimidated. Hence, that's why we should run a different way. And those kind of things are something that I would potentially miss out as a very much engineering approach. But the other side of manner being constructive and being logical, that's something that I was able to use because of my engineering background. So I think ultimately, does it help you or not? It really depends on you how do you relate it. For me, it helps me very well because I love the way how engineer thinks. I love the way how I able to replicate that thinking into my other work as well as a social entrepreneur. So yeah, so that's what essentially I have.
Thank you. There's this one. With all your experience in the social and entrepreneur domain, how would you incorporate this information if you were competing for Hult Prize?
How would I incorporate? Okay. Um, I think that's so much to incorporate, but let's talk about what I would have done differently, let's say compared to now, compared to the times when I was in a Hult Prize competition, right? So I think in general, last time when I was doing it, um, I was a little bit more, how to say, how to put it, I was a little bit more too confined in terms of what I potentially can reach out to. Because during the time I realized, of course, during the time, for us, we are still like a degree students, we don't have much experience in this. And what I felt was that, okay, I have this idea, this is a problem I want to solve. And how do I implement it? What's my business model and everything? I always think in a way that, okay, let's see what other people did and let's see how I can replicate it. That is definitely helpful as a fundamental, but there's a part of me that feels like I have some ideas in how to get this product out there in, let's say, in Philippines, in Indonesia, that truly is a bigger market out there. But I always have the concern like, hey, I feel like I can't actually do that. I feel like, I'm just a 20 plus years old student, if I would say that, it's too big to even realize in the first place. It just doesn't sound practical. But when after I get to experience this whole journey, I realize that it's definitely possible. The only sort of limitation imposed is by your perspective towards yourself. So just a quick example to you how it's very much possible, right? You know how prize ultimately, if you win the campus level, you go to regional final. You win the regional final, you go to the accelerator program in London. If you get the top, I think top 8 in the accelerator program, from how you get to go to US and pitch uh, in front of thousands, like in front of hundreds of really credible people, and even in front of President Bill Clinton himself, right? So that process itself, and ultimately, if you win Hot Prize, you actually will receive $1 million investment for your social enterprise, the idea itself. So it sounds like, right now, it sounds like it's really huge, it's really far, it's really difficult. But I want to remind you guys that back in 2018, the winner of Hub Prize 2018, the team that actually won the $1 million investment in the team, they're actually Malaysians. And one of them is actually a good friend of mine, which is Lincoln. So the social enterprise is called Rise Inc., and they're still running well and healthy right now. And recently, he and the team actually got nominated as Forbes 30 under 30 as well. So first level is that as youth and as student entrepreneur, are you able to reach the really that high level? Yes, that's possible. Maybe not now, but definitely in the future, and you need to believe in that. Second, as a Malaysian, is it possible or not? Because a lot of us think that, mostly it's like a Western country kind of students or people from Ivy League, Harvard and so on. Only they have the chance to win this, right? But not really. As you can see, Malaysians actually won it as well. Hence, that's why I feel like with the kind of like experience that I have right now, if I were to go back into my Hult Prize 2018, my competition, I would be more ambitious, and ambitious in a very much more credible and practical way. Meaning that this is the goal I want to achieve, and I would have certain level of innovation in terms of my business model that actually makes sense, and I would actually trust it a lot better. Because a lot of those things I only built after Hult Prize when I go through accelerator program after many times of iteration, then only I built a model that really works well. But before that, during Hult Prize, yeah, that was the thing that I was actually lacking a lot in terms of that. And yeah, I think another thing that I was lacking of definitely is the communication skill. There's a lot of things that I thought I need to include in my pitch because I thought it was important information. But after going to accelerator program, after realized that the same thing we used to pitch in 7 minutes, right now I can pitch it in 3 minutes, and that's enough to cover the whole 7 minutes. So I think that really comes with experience and really comes with training. So yeah, those are the two major things that I think I would do differently if I were to engage in Hult again as a competition.
Thank you for answering that question. We have one last one. What gives us the edge against other competitors?
Yeah. So what gives you the edge? If you want to talk about, let's not talk about like, oh, is my idea better than them and all these things, right? Of course, the first level is that you need to fit well with the theme given by the Hult Prize. If let's say they talk about food and then you suddenly talk about, I don't know, water, I don't know, like talking about maybe employment only, but not really about food industry as a whole, definitely you'll be out of the picture. And the second thing, of course, a theme, like I mentioned, in 1 year, in 10 years time, how many people you need to impact. I think there's a theme that's set by Hult Prize already. Do understand that and do fit into that criteria in terms of your idea. So that's the first level. But how do you differentiate yourself better than the others? I think there are two major things, right? First is that the extensiveness of your research when it comes to your solution, meaning the product and service that you're selling, and also the market research, meaning that why my product would work in the market and how extensive a research that you've done. Have you looked into the competitor, like I mentioned, or secondary research online, or whether you even run a survey yourself across Malaysia and collecting their feedback, whether they will buy your product or whether they have this problem or not, things like that. So that kind of extra things that you do, extra research and extra validation that you do, you get the judges feel like, hey, you do not only do more homework than the others. It feels like your team are more solid and more serious about this. That's the first thing. Second thing is that, hey, it makes a lot of sense, your idea. It makes a lot more sense. And I don't need to wait until Q&A, then only start asking this question. And potentially some of the questions are not asked to you, and then they will just think that it wouldn't work. So having this sort of like more research and more validation, if it will give you an edge. The second part definitely is that if you can have a proof of concept or a prototype being done, or like I mentioned, or at the very least a survey being done that this thing will work, definitely it will give you an edge. As imagine this is that other teams have their ideas, they just pitch their idea, and then it's just an idea that sounds good. But your idea is an idea that sounds good, yet at the same time you have run a certain experiment that makes them then tell them that actually this works. Or let's say if your solution is an online platform, you can make a dummy website, for example, for free, and tell them, oh, if I were to use this platform, this is how the process would be like. And then that kind of narrative, right, will give a visual impact towards the judges, saying that, oh, now I understand how the platform would work, and I understand, how come this will be effective. So those are the things that you can definitely do if it's possible for you to give you an edge over the others. Yep. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, that's the last question. Thank you so much for answering all of them.
Yeah, so I just realized I was still sharing my screen. Just quick shout out, if you have any sort of question, feel free to reach out to me via social media as well. Let me just stop sharing that. Yeah. So yeah, so I just a quick note is that, like I mentioned, if you have any sort of question, do reach out to me on social media or any sort of platform. And if you're interested in the social impact work or in the scene as a whole, do follow the organization that I'm involved in. We would love to definitely love to hear from you. So yeah, I'll pass back to the MC.
Yep, thank you for that. You really answered our participants' question really thoroughly, very extensive answers. I think that really helped them with their experience, especially this coming pitch on the 28th of November. And also, to express our gratitude, we actually prepared you a small token of appreciation. But as mentioned, because we really wish that we can give it to you in person, but due to the current situation, it might be slightly delayed. So yeah.
No worries, no worries. Totally understand. And it's really sweet of you guys actually have that thought.
It's okay because yeah, we really appreciate you coming, to this, especially at this hour and staying for that extra. It was actually 1 hour, right? But yeah.
Extra 21 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So if our participants have any other question, you can contact Mr. Shaikit here on his social media. I think he already shared the his details on the screen earlier. So if you have any question, maybe any last questions, you can drop them in the comment right now. If not, I think that wraps up our session. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate your your participation and your help today.
All right,
I think
no worries. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for staying, guys, and all the best. All right, bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yep. So in the comment, yeah, that's my Instagram. Yes, that's my Instagram. It's silly, but yeah, that's it is lah. It is what it is lah. All right, bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Night. Thank you, and stay safe. So yeah, to our participants and everyone here today who are still here tonight, we have another talk tomorrow at 8 p.m. We have Mr. Ian Chin, who will be sharing with us about growing a community. So Mr. Ian Chin is an environmentalist and community gardening startup founder, so who is also very involved in this social entrepreneurship and all that. So it's really nice, a really good experience for you all to come and join us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. So yeah, have a good night, everyone.